Yeah, it's your boy Ray on the mic. Let's go.
Now, as we continue to talk about the differences, one question that was brought up in the chat as well is frustrations that we may experience. Now, I know one of them is being, again, that sense of urgency or the feeling to have something happen immediate, but could you share even other frustrations that you've experienced, whether doing the work yourself within your context or that you experienced from other generations when it comes to how the work is progressing or not, or lack thereof?
I think one key difference, which kind of gets at what we were talking about earlier in terms of urgency, is I feel like there's almost a miscommunication between generations where Gen Z and I think some millennials will understand it as a sense of urgency, but I think some older generations might look at it as impatience. And I think part of that, again, kind of comes from the ways that we've been socialized, where it's not just about social media and the instant gratification, but it's also the fact that climate change is not like something that's like far away and down the road, like it's here right now. And like I grew up having, school shooter drills and things like that. And so the issues for us, it's not just right in front of our faces because it's on our phones, but it's really the reality of it is that we have so many pressing issues right here, right now. And that's why it really does become this life or death scenario for younger generations.
Going along with that, what I found to be most frustrating when I was working in industry was constantly having to make the business case over and over and over again. And I mean, I was only in industry for a year and a half, and I was so grateful that I found an opportunity as on the consulting end rather than in industry by the time I was graduating, that I wouldn't have to be stuck in those same conversations of having to justify what we were doing constantly. And I think that also adds to the sense of urgency because there's so much that we could be doing with our time that's spent having the same conversations over and over again.
Yeah, I'll kind of echo what Maddie was saying. One of the challenges is having a leader who could more typically be a boomer generation or Gen X maybe doesn't buy in to DEI. So like it's not important to them. So, knowing, okay, I can go to this VP because he's going to have my back. He supports this stuff. But then like knowing that when I send that message to another VP, it's not going to go anywhere. So how do I send a consistent message across the company and make it so not, there's one group in our company that I feel like feels less included because of the leadership person maybe doesn't buy in, so that information doesn't roll down because they're not sharing it, or like at least maybe they're sharing it, but just like, oh yeah, HR says do this, like rather than like, look at this great like new employee resource group we have, they're going to do bang, 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 like it's going to be so great, like they're not being an advocate for us as well. So like kind of the business case and like trying to just push the ball in all directions to make sure that it's getting communicated is a challenge.
I think to add on to that as well, just having a lack of resources. A lot of companies, a lot of leaders will say, hey, this is important. And then when you need the funding and you need the support to actually get the work off the ground and to take it to the next step, it's, oh, okay, like we were unable to do this. We don't have the funding for this. Like try and make something out of nothing, see what you can get. And a lot of us, I would say, and speak for both millennials and Gen Z, we're not the ones to go to someone and say, hey, give us your trainings, give us your workshops, give us this for free. Like we feel that people should be compensated for their time and for their work.
I there's a few questions that are swirling through. One of them, we'll talk a little bit about just that integration of what's happening outside of our industry or outside of our context and how that plays a role in the workplace culture and how do we blend those things together or not. But one pressing question I think is the sentiment that something that you stated, Maddie, was there's this constant feeling of always having to state the business case. And somebody stated that hasn't changed in over generations. Why? Like, and if you have a thought towards why do you think the business case has to constantly be changed or constantly be brought up in order to show that DEI is important and our people are important and we need to have this work, I would love to hear from anybody. Why do you think we have to keep bringing up the business case for DEI?
I can start. I think just in general, most corporate culture gears towards DEI being something that's nice to have instead of something that is integral to the function of the business. And until that changes, I think, we're still just going to have to constantly explain why it is integral to the business.
Sadly. And I'm processing if there is opportunities for us to change that. And maybe that comes with the process of which I've heard often, build your own table kind of a mentality, right? It's like, okay, well, if this institution that's been around for hundreds of years or whatever isn't going to make that, again, immediate gratificational change, then let me go ahead and go over here and build my own entity that will have that bit baked into the foundation, right? So it is a part of the work versus trying to turn the Titanic, if you will, towards this particular direction. But it's constantly becoming one of those conversations, especially as new generations enter the workplace, desiring to have this as a part of the work, not just a nice to have and something that's separate. And because of just the dynamics of the workplace and knowing that, again, y'all are in my homes, my dog was just barking the doorbell rang. This integration that our work in life has now become a blend and a bond, right? To where in previous generations, there may not have been that level of you get to see my family or we get to talk about politics or we could do all these things where now we're saying, yes, we want to talk about this, right? We want to bring this into our work. So do you feel comfortable, and as Gen Z's millennials, to express these points of views? And how have you seen that been beneficial in creating or advancing some of your DEI work? Why do you feel it's important to bring in those elements, create that psychological safety for the work that you're doing and helping create that type of culture?
Yeah, I can start. I think understanding the person as a whole and kind of what they're going through can really help you understand their performance, how they would better be supported. One way in construction, we have the highest rate of suicide in our industry. And so mental health is key to reducing those numbers. So to do that, we need to talk to people about how they're doing, and just for safety incidents in general. If someone's distracted on the job because their mom is in the hospital or their dog is sick or their kid is, maybe getting into trouble at school, they may not be able to focus and need to have that be understood so that they can share what's going on. Maybe they need to leave a little bit earlier. Those things are critical to our industry. Our industry wants to focus on low incident rates. We want to lower this, but then what does that mean? What do we need to do? And so I think that's one thing that we've been focusing on is the mental health aspect and how that includes bringing in different parts of your organization, of yourself, into the workplace.
I think kind of going back to the idea of comfortability and bringing up these conversations, I think one thing that's really critical that I've learned as a consultant is just how critical it is to have a mentor in this industry. To have someone, even if you don't necessarily feel comfortable going to the person who's going to make whatever decision you need them to make, just having someone to bounce ideas off of and someone who can guide you, I think is it's really critical to avoiding burnout. I think it's critical to being more confident and being able to just participate in DEI work with your full self and having the strength to keep going forward. And on another note of that, ironically, I think a lot of the best moments that I've had in doing DEI work have been the moments where I've been the least comfortable. And I think we focus a lot of energy on the idea of comfort, which I don't think is necessarily the same thing as being safe. Obviously, everyone needs to stay safe, but I think a lot of this work actually forces us to become uncomfortable in order to get to a place where everyone can feel more comfortable and can feel safe in the first place.
One of the questions that have come up, again, talking about we were trying to push this work effort forward. We want to be able to see this work done, but some of us may not necessarily have that, top decision-making power, right? Especially not organizational hierarchical standard. Like we are working to hopefully influence the work to ensure that the CEO or the executive director, whoever that is at the top seat, is helping push this work forward. I would love for you all to share just what are some of the ways that you hope you push your DEI initiatives, or if you have an example of an initiative that you push forward, and how do you hold accountability to ensure that that work gets done?
I can share. I feel like I'm talking a lot, but we have employee resource groups that we work with to kind of spread it throughout the business. We just launched our Inclusive Diversity Ambassador program to kind of bring people, we're a small team, so we need to leverage the support of other people and seeing how the work that we're doing can enhance and add on to other departments rather than making it as like this extra box you need to tick. We saw an issue that communication was kind of challenging since people weren't reading the emails and stuff. So we decided to launch an internal radio show at our company. So once a month for 1 hour, we bring on one executive, like corporate person, and then someone from the field operations side of the business to talk about what's going on. We share announcements and updates. And we've been going a little over 6 months now. And we created these like kind of as just like fillers commercials to like advertise like our company app, or like use Vitality to like earn points for your health and stuff. And now we are getting to the point that we have too many commercials and we're like, we don't have enough time to advertise for whatever it is, the program, the new travel program we're launching, Safety Week, so we're starting to we found a need that we're filling. And so we get to decide the content of like, we try not to be too self-serving in that sense, but it's really creating some great momentum.
Similarly, on that employee engagement aspect, we recently launched a company-wide newsletter. Previously, a lot of departments had their own separate newsletters, and there was a lot of different announcements and things coming at the same time. So we've kind of consolidated that down into one, and each area has a different section. On my half, I usually chime in with like updates or different articles that people can get more resources from or learn something from, along with like upcoming events and extending office hours. So anyone can come and speak their mind, speak freely, provide feedback, and let us know what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, what they want to see.
And I know Maddie and Michaela, you both are in the consulting space, but DEI is still a part of your work. But I'd love to hear how that looks in your spaces.
Yeah, I was going to say that something that we advise on is getting as much data as possible, because what gets measured gets done. But unfortunately, most DEI departments do not have access to the data, or they don't even have the resources to get the data in the first place. And so again, that's bringing it back to the business case. It's really hard to prove if you don't have the resources to take to your C-suite or your CEO and say, this is what we did and this was the result of it. So something that I want to see in the future is the proper staffing and the proper resources that diversity departments should have. And I also would like to see some more collaboration between diversity departments and other teams. I just want to see less CDOs set up to fail. If it's going to be something that's ingrained into the entire business, like companies say they want to do, they have to give them the staff and the resources to do so.
Yeah, I was just going to say, one thing that I've seen that I think is a really critical element to DEI work is not only mentoring, but also sponsorship, which is a little bit different from mentoring. For people who might not know the difference, a mentor is someone who, again, you can kind of talk to and just work things through with someone you admire maybe. But a sponsor is someone who is going to advocate for a seat for you at the table. And so the thing that we've sort of seen in the past is, the typical model of how people get promotions is, well, your name comes up in a meeting somewhere because someone higher up has brought that up. And for a lot of people, they tend to kind of just pick people who they see themselves in. And so traditionally, that's how a lot of white men would sort of ascend the corporate ladder. And what we've seen is when we kind of are able to put in these sort of formal sponsorship relationships, you're able to advance people who otherwise would not have had contact with those people in order to get that promotion.
That's good. That's good. And that's a very beneficial perspective. And I love the distinction that you gave. So thank you for that, because that sponsorship does offer the opportunity for all of us to say, okay, who around us can we elevate? Right. And I think, I know in this room, a lot of us have that DEI lens already. So that's baked into our perspective. Like, all right, historically underrepresented identities or historically excluded identities haven't been elevated. How do I be intentional about reaching and making that engagement connection? But that could definitely be an opportunity for us as we make connections with those who may not have that lens or trying to figure out what that lens looks like in their roles, to be that sponsor, right? To be intentional about that lens and that perspective. Because, we out here, right? Like we're out here. We love to do the work. We want to do the work. But maybe not all of us have put in the quote unquote time to do it, or, know somebody that knows somebody right from that connection point. So I appreciate you stating that.